Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Bradburn. Alongside me is Logan Camden, and today we are going to be ranking the top 10 NBA players under 25. Now, this is going to be a list about long-term value. So to make things fun, different, and honestly more interesting, since these are all young players than our usual just straight up current how good are they right now rankings, this is basically who do you want as the building blocks of your franchise. That is obviously accounting for age, projection, upside, availability, all of those things factor in. So before we get into the list, Logan, as always, I have to ask, any really tough cuts, any honorable mentions who stand out here for you? And I will also clarify, this is under 25. 25-year-olds are not included. So sorry, Hallie, sorry, Garland. There's some very good 25-year-olds. Triple J, not eligible.
I really consider Jonathan Kuminga. You know, I think the Warriors are really smart for having him as a really high priority and high value kind of player.
Jesus.
Yeah, dude, I've been kind of agonizing over the first guy that I have off my list, and I kind of just want to run you through like my thought processes, and I kind of want to evaluate if I'm losing my marbles or not.
Could be.
Am I crazy for not having Franz Wagner in my top 10?
I think you're a little bit crazy. Who's in your 10 spot, I guess, maybe is what it depends on.
The dilemma I'm having is really like between him and Amen Thompson. Is that diabolical?
I've got room for them both on my list, so I don't think that's diabolical. I'm just wondering who you're valuing over those guys. It's not by any chance Dylan Harper, is it? Okay. All right. Well, you know what? I can't be that mad at it then, because Harper's my toughest cut. And it's interesting. I did not this exercise, but I went on with the deep three guys and we ranked just like our top 30 most valuable players in the NBA, everybody included, but still with like that long-term philosophy. I had Dylan Harper at 26. I think I was the only guy who had him on my list at all. So it's interesting to see that you're even higher on him. I do think this is a guy with clear-cut all-NBA potential. And when I do compare him to some of the other guards who are a few years older, like a Tyrese Maxey or whatever, who theoretically could be a contender for this list. Like, I just much prefer the upside with Harper as an offensive engine, being the level of downhill scoring threat that he is with his athleticism, great size, and then also just like the craftiness he has, the handle, the ability to play off of 2 feet, so efficient at the rim, with very good passing chops, with the ability to be a plus defender if he really engages there. He has the physical tools. I don't want to be overly optimistic about that, but we saw some flashes even in Summer League of like, this is a guy who has the ability there. He just checks a lot of boxes as a foundational guard. So kind of the only reason he's not here for me is we haven't seen him set foot on an NBA court just yet, and he is not like the level of Flagg, surefire stud to me where I'm comfortable placing him on the list already. And then, of course, the jump shot questions. Is he going to be even an average jump shooter at the next level? I think it's fair to ask. And if he's not, then that would probably be enough of a concern to justifiably keep him off my list. But I don't think it's crazy that you have him here at all.
Yeah, and I'm just so high on Franz that I feel bad leaving him off this list because I think he's such a talented basketball player. And again, we talked about it a bunch, but like the one thing that he's missing is that three ball. Like, he's a plus defender, he's a good ball handler. We've seen him be successful without Paolo Banchero out there. Like, I think Franz is really talented. I mean, you have to make some tough judgment calls here, and unfortunately, Franz was the victim of just not having enough spots, man. Too much talent in the NBA. It's a good problem to have. After Franz, I did consider Jalen Johnson. I want to be clear, I think there's a pretty big gap between Franz and the rest of the guys I'm going to be talking about, just because I do think Franz is just closer to this list. But I did consider Jalen Johnson. He's just, I don't really look at him as a potential number one ever. I think he could be like a really high-end number two at his apex, when a lot of the guys on my list I do look at as number ones. And then Sengun was probably another one of my toughest cuts here, just because I do think if he figures out the jump shot, which is why he's not here, but if he figures out his touch shot making, extends, becomes a reliable mid-range and three-point shooter, I think Sengun's probably a surefire guy to make this list, but he's not there yet. So I did omit him. Those to me were all of my really toughest cuts.
I feel like Şengün is probably the omission who people are going to be most upset about, just because I know that he has a faction of big-time believers. I am maybe not as high as the consensus on Şengün. I do think it's kind of a difficult archetype to build around if you're not really damn good. And I do applaud the strides that he's made defensively to become solid there. But the type of big that he is, where although he is a gifted passer, absolutely, he's not a play finisher, and he is somebody who demands to like play through him out of the post, can be a ball stopper there, is going to demand a lot of touches, and he's just not a very good scorer right now. He's not efficient. He's not even close. And so that's where, yes, he has the footwork, right? He has the strength out of the post to get to pretty good spots as a self-creator. He's just not good at making the shots right now. We've talked about this a lot, but really difficult rim finishing season for him. About 40% inside the paint, outside the restricted area. That's not good enough. Really no jump shooting game to speak of. I mean, still low volume and low efficiency from mid-range, and the three ball is effectively non-existent. So it's just that overall very low scoring efficiency and just the issues with shot making. If Şengün gets better at putting the ball in the basket, yes, then he starts to make a legitimate case for the top 10. But right now, I just can't get there when he's 54% true shooting in the regular season. He was like 49% in the playoffs. And yes, that was a really tough series, the offensive situation around him, the defense he was going up against. But again, if you're just getting to 12-foot hook after 12-foot push shot and you're not making those shots at a solid clip, then you're not impactful enough offensively to be on my list.
And I still feel like there's a gap between the perception of Şengün as a basketball player and where he actually is right now. And I think a lot of that has to do with like misattribution of the team's success. And we talked about this with Paolo, how the pendulum swung in his favor when the Magic took over. The thing with Cade, where people are saying Cade's a top 5, top 10 player now, and just because the Pistons got really good really fast. And I feel like because Şengün was the all-star choice for the Rockets and they were, the 2 seed this year, I think a lot of people kind of took that as, oh, this guy is that good. And I still feel like they can kind of fill in the gaps where Şengün does need to get better as a basketball player. But he's still very talented. I'm still a believer in Şengün. I'm optimistic that he's going to figure out some of these touch and shot-making issues. But for now, he's not on my list.
I would make a distinction, though, between him and Cade, where even though Cade absolutely does have his flaws that some people will overlook because they conflate the idea of what Cade will be with what he is right now.
Misattribution error, less about like the skill set thing.
No, I understand what you're saying. My point is Cade actually is the driver of his team's success. I think that people, sure, in some cases got too high on him and also just attributed like singularly the change between the 2024 Pistons and the 2025 Pistons too much to Cade, where yes, Cade got a little better, but the situation around him also got a lot better. But like Cade is the offensive engine there, right? He was playing at an all-NBA kind of level. I don't view Şengün as that level of player. I didn't think that for the second half of the regular season, he was their most impactful player. I thought that was Amen Thompson, who I also think has considerably higher upside. And really just the strength of Houston was that incredible collective defense and their overall depth and athleticism. And I do commend Şengün's ability to still produce with volume in a very difficult playoff setting, but the efficiency, the shot making just has got to get better. Even the free throw shooting, like all of that regressed for Şengün this past year. And there are ultimately just guys who I think are more seamless fits and whose value I prefer right now, including the guy who I have in my number 10 spot, Logan. And he's off your list. So I'll actually get this one started and we can have the Franz Wagner conversation right now. I see the Harper case. Harper was really the only guy who I seriously considered. Like, I never considered Şengün over Franz. I just think Franz is in such a valuable archetype to me, where with Şengün, again, I do have a pretty high bar that he has to meet in terms of offensive efficiency to justify, like, trying to build around his archetype. Whereas Franz, the ultimate do-it-all wing, like, that's a guy who I want on my team every single day of the week, regardless of the situation. And what he did this past year was really impressive. Gave you 24, 6, and 5 on 56% true shooting with a plus 13 on-off differential. While he is playing in this hellish offensive situation, obviously without Paolo for a stretch of the season, and he actually was still carrying them to solid team results, very solid team results in those stretches, but just a complete lack of creation alongside him, a complete lack of shooting. And nevertheless, he was able to produce with that volume, and he was able to have that impact on Orlando's team success. Probably the craziest case for Franz as being somebody who you have to include on this list is actually what he has done without Paolo. And if you look at this past season, in those minutes where he was on the floor with Paolo off, Franz averaged 36 and 7 per 75 possessions on 56% true shooting, still kept the turnovers low, and actually managed to lead Orlando, even in this really bad offensive situation, to good team offensive results. They had a 116 offensive rating in those minutes, and they were a plus 9.5 net team. So somehow, with Franz on and Paolo off, they were playing like an elite basketball team in terms of their net rating. Their offense looked significantly better, and Franz's production on a per-minute basis was pretty much that of a superstar. And I do think that that speaks to the fact that he is, in some ways, a more complete player than Paolo right now. They both have flaws that need to be improved upon, but just when it comes to consistent processing, decision-making, playmaking, Franz has an edge there. When it comes to fitting into a team offense and keeping the offense fluid, not being a ball stopper, I think that Franz is a little bit more developed there. And he just has some phenomenal traits offensively. He is an elite driver and an elite finisher, one of the best wings in basketball in that way. The level of footwork, ball handling, body control that he possesses for being a legitimate 6'10" guy, the level of touch in the lane, his ability to use his length and finish against contests, like, it's all incredible. He was fourth among non-bigs, if you take out power forwards and centers, in restricted area makes in the entire NBA. He was 8th in points per game off drives in the entire NBA. Just a phenomenal downhill scorer, gets to the line at a great rate, is an elite free throw shooter, awesome in transition, one of the scarier downhill scorers there, and is a really gifted passer at 6'10", like kind of checks every box that you want from somebody who is not an elite passer, but the ability to make lay down passes, to make skip passes at times, to manipulate the defense with his eyes. He has all the angles available to him at his height. Good anticipation, good touch, good placement. Like, he's a really good passer. And so he has this combination of scoring and playmaking that you love, especially with the ability to consistently get into the paint and collapse the defense like that. And then he's also a positive, versatile defender. So this is why I've been saying for a while, Franz is a decent three-point shot away from being an all-NBA player, not a couple years from now, right now. Like, he is already that good at so many aspects of the game, but obviously the three-point shot has been a big issue for him. He's about 28% from deep over the last couple years. If he had shot the three ball decently in the playoff series that they played against Boston this year, I think we all would have been so impressed with Franz, because his inside the arc scoring was outstanding in this really difficult offensive environment, but he shot the three horribly. And so that does pose some issues for him as an on-ball scorer, of course, not having the reliable pull-up three, as an off-ball presence in an offense, not having the reliable catch-and-shoot three. Like, it just has to get better. And even though he clearly still has, like, the really good touch, when you look at how he shoots from the free throw line, when you look at his paint touch, when you even look at his mid-range shooting, the mechanics are not fluid. The hitch has gotten significant in his three-point shot, and that stuff has to be improved upon. The reason that I have enough confidence in Franz becoming an average three-point shooter again to have him on my list is that he came into the league a very solid three-point shooter, and he was for his first couple years, and we have seen regression in the mechanics and the results, but he's not one of those players where I'm like, I just don't know if he has it in him, where it's like we haven't seen it or he doesn't have the touch. Like, he has shown an ability to shoot 36% from three, and now he's lost it for the moment. I do think he can get it back, and if he does, we're talking about a guy who is, again, an all-NBA level player. So I understand you taking Harper over him, but I think it's got to be really close, and I just struggle to see how anybody sees, like, a big gap between Paolo and him. Because even if you're just looking at like box score stuff, that gap isn't there. And then if you look at the efficiency, the impact, the defense, like all of those things favor Franz. So I do think that Paolo has a higher ceiling, but this idea that it's like, oh, you have Paolo up here, he is this superstar. Like some people will tell you right now, or at least on the verge of that. And Franz is like, I don't know, decent number 2. Like that to me is crazy. I think there's a very strong argument that this past year, Franz was better. I think they're on the same plane as players right now. I just think Paolo has more room to grow into, and that's why I have him a little higher. But I love Franz. I think he's a really awesome all-around wing.
Yeah, I mean, Franz is probably who I'd rather have right now. The weird thing about Franz's three ball is the fact that he looks more comfortable shooting off the dribble threes than he does off the catch, and that's a lot of where his shots come from. And I'm getting to a point with Franz where I would rather him just eliminate the shot, not completely from his game, but like, dial back the volume because he does like it. That's a shot he's very comfortable getting to. Like if you just watch Franz tape game to game, like looks good. It looks clean. Like he's always really good at getting into the shot. It's finishing it and making it. And I don't know whether if it's just a mechanic thing or if it's also a mental thing with Franz now where like he's been so bad shooting from behind the arc. If it is literally a confidence thing, like I think it could just be a combination of both. Mm-hmm. I don't really have anything negative to say about Franz. I just kind of feel like he is what he is, and that's why he's not on my list. And I feel like everybody on my list has more to tap into. I mean, if he adds the three ball to his game, that's a major dimension that rounds him out. And don't take that disrespectfully at all. What I think Franz is right now is like an all-star caliber wing. I don't say that like disrespectfully, like, oh, Franz is just what he is. I just feel like he is probably closer to his peak than a lot of players that we're going to talk about on this list, and I think the other players on my list peaks are higher.
Yeah, I would agree that he is closer to his ceiling than most of the guys above him on this list, but I do think there is still clear opportunity for improvement because of the three-point shot.
For sure, and the one thing I will give Franz is while I say that there's more room for these guys to grow, the benefit of a guy like Franz is there's a lot more polish to his game than some of these other guys that we're going to talk about, where he's a sure thing, a known commodity.
Like, if you were to say, okay, you get this version of Franz for the rest of his career, like he doesn't get better from here, or you get this version of Paolo and he doesn't get better from here. If I'm trying to win a title, I would take the version of Franz. Yeah. So I think that's an argument that he does have when there is still clear opportunity for him to get back to a solid level as a three-point shooter. I also do agree with your point where, like, there is no reason for him to be attempting 7.5 threes a game in the playoffs. I think even 6 3-point attempts per game in the regular season, like, that number just has to come down, even if he's shooting it better. I mean, like, that's just too much of his shot diet.
It's long rebounds. It's easy. You're just wasting possessions. That's not good ball.
But, man, the passing, the size, the downhill scoring, the plus defense, the ability to be so efficient in the paint, keep turnovers low.
Do you think this version of Franz right now, in an ideal situation, could he be a number 2 on a title team, or do you think he's number 3?
I would say in an ideal situation, it's possible. I think that he absolutely brings enough self-creation, playmaking, impacts the game in so many ways. Really, the only holdup is the three-point shot. And that's obviously a concern. But if he shot at 29% from deep, I don't know. I think about a player like J-Dub, who literally just was the second best player on a title team in an ideal situation. But that's the bar that we're holding him to. And J-Dub is better than Franz, obviously. And J-Dub is more impactful defensively, obviously, because he's like top 10 there. And Franz is just good. But J-Dub had a down three-point shooting playoff run. And yet he was able to impact the game positively in so many ways that he ended up being a tremendous positive for that team. And that would kind of be the same path for Franz. It's, okay, yes, maybe there's a below average shooting playoff run from him, but he's so good at so much else, and he just plays a winning style of basketball when it comes to being so complementary and versatile that I could see it. But we're waiting on that three-point shot, Franz, and I really hope that it comes around. And I think I am on the side of being an optimist, because I feel like some people are just too low on Franz right now and not appreciating how good of a season he did have in spite of the shooting issues. Who's in your number 10 spot, Logan?
So I don't have Dylan Harper in my 10 spot. I have Amen Thompson here in my 10 spot. And Amen is unique in the sense that he's probably the most offensively limited player on this list that we're going to talk about today in terms of like floor spacing and touch and shooting. But in terms of all-around value, I mean, Amen's a defensive freak, and that is why I prefer him to a guy like Franz Wagner. I feel like there's such a massive gap. And I do think Amen is going to get better offensively. Like, if Amen doesn't, I don't know if he deserves to be on this list. You know what I mean? Like, if he just is what he is offensively, like with his touch concerns, I think he's a good and impactful winning basketball player, but he's still very significantly flawed, where, like, you can imagine in a playoff series, teams would just leave him on an island alone by himself. They'd give him the Russell Westbrook treatment and say, okay, well, we're going to play 4-on-5, and or we're going to play 5-on-4, and you're going to have to make us pay. I am optimistic about Amen's long-term prospects. One, offensively. One, I think that we saw a massive improvement in terms of touch from year one into year two. And obviously, I think that's to be expected, but they were really drastic, and that was everywhere on the court. If it was from behind the arc, if it was in floater range, if it was at the rim, and Amen's already a pretty good rim finisher, but you're seeing the improvement in touch and comfortability of operating in the lane, and I'm anticipating another pretty exponential leap from Amen next season. And yeah, again, I don't know if it's going to happen rapid fire immediately where he puts all of it together, but I think it's going to be season by season where we do see improvement, and I'm expecting him to, and it maybe won't even show statistically. You know, I think with the introduction of KD, you may see him be a better playmaker. I don't know if the scoring numbers are going to reflect it, but I do think we'll see improvement in touch, in his shot, in the ease and the comfort of taking those shots and getting to those looks. And getting to them really isn't a problem. It's almost like Sengun. It's like he can get to whatever look he wants. Can he make it? But the reason he is on this list, and I'm confident, even if he doesn't max out offensively, is he's one of the best defensive players on the planet, and he's one of the best athletes on the planet. He is a monstrous, destructive rebounding wing. He is a problem in the open floor and in transition, and I mean, just one of the best defensive playmakers on the planet. An elite help side rim protector. It just freakish kind of verticality for a guy his size. He is maybe the fastest player in basketball. I don't know. Is that a stretch with a guy like Fox? And, like, I say that. I more mean, like, I don't mean with the ball in his hands. I more so mean just, like, open floor, coast to coast. I think Amen might be the fastest. Yeah.
What I would say is he is probably the quickest 6'7" dude I've ever seen outside of peak LeBron.
I mean, he's a blur. He is insane.
And I'd also say he's probably the best athlete I've ever seen outside of peak LeBron, period, point blank.
And it's not just in the open floor for, like, offense. Like, last season, some of the defensive highlights you see of him in transition, like chase down blocks and stuff like that, like, understand what I mean when I say this. Amen does stuff in the sense, like Wemby, in the sense that, like, Amen will do stuff that I've never seen before. And, like, obviously Wemby's on a different tier, and Wemby will do something every single game I watch him in that I've never seen before from a player because he's such an alien. But Amen does stuff like that too, where, oh my God, how did he recover and make that block? How did he recover and get that steal? How did he chase that guy down? He just blows by this guy, and I feel like we're just scratching the surface here with Amen. So this is definitely a projection. Like, right now, if all of these guys were finished products, I don't think Amen would make my list. He's a great defensive player, but he is flawed enough offensively to where I probably wouldn't have him here. But I do expect him to get better. Is he ever going to be an offensive engine, like an offensive number one? I can't really confidently say that. But he's one of the best defensive players on the planet, and I think he could be good enough to be an offensive number two in totality, and I think he impacts the game in enough ways that I'm comfortable having him on this list. There's definitely an offensive gap between him and Franz, but I also think there's a pretty major defensive gap, and like I said, I think Amen has a ton of room to grow offensively, so he's in my 10 spot.
The upside is just immense here. So I have Amen at number 9. I have been an absolute Amen truther, stan, glazer since he was a prospect, and I've just continued to double and triple down on my stock with him, and it's paying off so far. paying off. I was big on the Amen breakout going into last year. It happened, and I think he is just going to continue to improve, and I think he will take another leap this year. And the reason I'm a little bit higher on him than Franz is because of the floor to ceiling ratio, where I actually think that Franz's floor is very high because he's already about the 30th best player in the NBA, and I think there's an opportunity for him to get to be the 13th to 15th best player in the NBA, like if that jump shot comes around to a solid level. I look at Amen, and already, coming off of year 2, he is like a surefire top 50 player to me. And he's not just a top 50 player. He is the sort of player who, if I am trying to win a championship, I want on my team every single day of the week because he is so impactful in so many ways. He has such incredible basketball feel and IQ and defensive ridiculous value and versatility, knows how to be effective offensively with his great strengths and with his limitations. Like, that's a dude who I already buy into as a high impact player. Not as good as a Franz because of the offensive difference. But then I think about the ceiling and what Amen can be. And where Franz is a guy who I think could definitely be third team All-NBA, Amen is a guy who, if it all comes together, could be like the 5th best player in the NBA. Like, the ceiling is that crazy, and I already love what I'm getting from Amen. So that's why I feel comfortable having him here at number 9, and I feel like most of his case is just predicated upon the fact that he is one of the greatest athletes to ever play the sport, and he has a phenomenal understanding of how to leverage that athleticism to impact winning. I said this when Amen was a rookie, and a lot of it has actually already turned out to be true, but I said this is a guy who has the potential to be best in the world in terms of perimeter defense. I already consider him now the best non-big defender on the planet. In terms of offensive rebounding from a wing, he's already the best on the planet. Cutting from a wing, I think he's already the best on the planet. He can someday be the best transition player in basketball. He is the best athlete in the league right now with a top-tier motor. Defensively, what this guy can do is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you mentioned the ability to make these insane recovery plays in transition, in the half court, but also his matchup versatility is insane. I mean, this dude is 6'7", and you put him on a Steph Curry, and he's like one of the best Steph defenders that we've seen, and he can just suffocate him with his athleticism and speed and length and pressure the ball and force some turnovers. God damn it, he's 6'7", Logan. He's 6'7". And he can also like switch onto the post and he can guard there for possessions. He's just so insanely impactful on that side of the ball. And he's like the Energizer Bunny. And then offensively, he's already giving you 14, 8, and 4 on 60% true shooting. That's with top 10 defense at the very least. I think Amen makes a strong case for being a top 5 defender on the planet right now. And then you just look at the trajectory and you think about how big a leap he did take in year 2. Talking about Amen as a jump shooter is always kind of weird because there are the people who are like, oh, well, if he gets a jump shot. And then there are the people who are like, oh, well, he's never going to get a jump shot. And what I've always said is the bar for Amen to be a superstar is pretty much average jump shooting, maybe just mediocre jump shooting. If he is a Ja Morant level jump shooter, right? Like, holy shit, we are talking about one of the best basketball players on the planet. And maybe even him getting to a Ja level as a jump shooter where you're low 30s. And I'd like him to be more capable off the catch, whereas Ja is pretty much all about the pull-up shooting. But like, just being capable there is possible for Amen, even though he came into the league with these really problematic shooting mechanics and basically no resume to speak of as a jump shooter. You look at his improvement from year 1 to year 2, and his touch did get better in the paint outside the restricted area, where he's shooting 45% on those shots, basically. That's a solid number. That's positive touch. The mid-range game becoming an actual part of his arsenal at all, where he can shoot almost 40% there and will actually get to his mid-range pull-up. Like, that is something he has in his bag. Adding that from year 1 to year 2 is significant to me. I understand the three-point shooting is still bad, but he also did double his three-point percentage from year 1 to year 2. So I think it's probably overly optimistic to say, yes, Amen Thompson is ever going to become a good jump shooter. I also think it's overly simplistic to say, oh, he was a bad shooter in year 1 and he was a bad shooter in year 2, so he'll never be decent. Because it's like, no, he was a terrible shooter in year 1, and he was a well below average shooter in year 2, but in certain areas passable and showed significant progress. So I think we can expect some continued improvement there. I do think Amen is a grinder, and I think it was really encouraging what we saw this past year. And then you think about the overall on-ball potential. If this is a guy who can shoot 48% on floaters, 42% from mid-range, 32% on pull-up threes, like if he gets to the level where he is keeping you honest as a defense at a passable level with those shots as a counter, my God, this is one of the greatest downhill athletes that we've seen. This is already a guy who, even with teams not respecting any of the over-the-top shot making from him, playing off of him against a really good Warriors defense, on a team where the spacing around him was absolutely awful, like he still attempted more than 10 shots a game in the paint in that playoff series, shot really efficiently at the rim, and in the second half of that series, ended up carving up the Warriors. Like, yes, it was a struggle for him to find his path to being productive offensively early in the series. And then once he got going, it was like, okay, Amen is here. Amen has arrived. Amen has figured it out. And so I think there's more potential for him to grow on ball. I think the handle is already really good for his size. Yes, it could stand to get a little bit better, but I think it can improve. I think as a passer, just because he hasn't been entrusted with as much on-ball responsibility, we haven't fully seen his potential there, which as a prospect was so insanely impressive. The velocity, the vision as a passer, the creativity at his size with all the angles available to him. That's where I say if it all comes together, there is a world in which Amen Thompson is like a first-team All-NBA caliber player. And I understand that is very optimistic. And that's why Amen, as much as I love the guy, isn't top 5 on my list. Because that is best-case scenario. And the reality is there are guys above Amen who just have like more reasonable median outcomes. We're like, yeah, I'm pretty confident that guy's just going to be like consistently a top 20 player. And Amen, it's like right now, maybe he's not as good as that guy. And maybe I'm more confident in that guy, just, again, that medium outcome. But the floor for Amen is still really good. And the ceiling is extremely high. And I just know that no matter what, I'm always going to want Amen on my team. So that's why I think he's got to be here.
I mean, what do you think he ranks like if Amen doesn't get any better in those areas? He's a top 50 guy, like could be a number 3 on a title team.
Yeah. And I'll take that. With that
he's
upside,
still damn good. I think Amen's a winner. I think Amen's a winner through and through. And that's what
absolutely.
That's why I think the shooting thing's always got overblown. I thought you said it really well at the start of your spiel, but like he is brilliant. The guy's basketball IQ and feel are out of this world. And so even if some of these like technical skill areas never come through, like Amen knows how to get the most out of his limitations. You know what I mean? He doesn't try to do too much. He doesn't force the issue. He understands his limitations, and he tries to stay away from them right now, and he's rounding his game out, but he's really effective, and he's great at weaponizing what makes him great. So, Amen was a lock for me here, but I would definitely hear an argument if somebody wanted to have him top 6, top 5, and saw that vision. But like you said, I tend to agree. There's just more guys that I have confidence in that don't have as significant a flaw as well.
Yeah. So who's in your number 9 spot?
So I do have Dylan Harper here in my number 9 spot, and I would hear an argument for Dylan Harper, honestly, in my top 6. And the reason I say that is I think Dylan Harper is going to be a superstar kind of offensive player. I think he's going to be an offensive engine one day. And the debate I was having, obviously I was debating him and Amen and Franz, but I was also debating whether I should have him above a guy like Cade Cunningham, where I think Dylan Harper probably is going to be a better scorer in the NBA than Cade Cunningham. And I know that's a very high bar considering the fact that Cade is averaging 26 points per game and a lot of people are blown away at some of the raw volume numbers. But I think Dylan just has a much easier path to being a reliable scorer, and a lot of it has to do with the downhill pressure that we always talk about with Dylan. So aggressive attacking downhill. He has such a heavy and deep bag of finishes and gathers. He's such a smooth operator out of pick and roll. In the pre-draft process, I always said it, you give the guy a screen and you just let him go to work. Like Dylan is going to find his shot. He has got impeccable feel with the ball in his hands, and he has got a great handle. He's super shifty. And the difference in Cade and his game and why I think he is going to be a better scorer is just he does get downhill. Cade is attempting 16.7% of his shots inside 3 feet. That's a career low for him now. That number has dropped every single year since he entered the league. Now, I do think Cade did a really good job this year of getting to that intermediate area, that 3 to 10-foot range. And ultimately, Cade's strength is the reason that I have him above Dillon, and Cade's all-around impact. The high-level rebounding value, the defensive value, the ability to bring me that and some scoring punch and high-level playmaking. There are things that I think Cade needs to clean up, and we'll get into that here in a minute. But that is why I prefer Cade, because I think I'm not as confident in Dillon being a high-level rebounder. I'm not as confident in Dillon being a elite kind of defender. But I do think he's a special offensive player. His ability to get downhill, and you were talking about the jump shot. Dillon gets and produces open jumpers. Like, he is great at manufacturing off-the-dribble open jumpers from deep and the mid-range. Literally everywhere on the court. It's just a matter of hitting them. To me, the guy is so smooth. I do just think he's going to develop as a jump shooter and be a reliable. I think 37% is where I would expect Dillon to end up as like a three-point shooter and then a pretty good mid-range shooter. I know that's a high bar, but I think Dillon's going to be a really good shooter. And he's already one hell of a downhill athlete. He gets to the line a ton. He is a great finisher at the rim. He's an offensive beast, and I think he's going to be an offensive engine one day. And so I do have 2 players in the Spurs in my top 10 here, Harper being one. The other guy you can probably guess, but I'm very high on Harper. I think he's going to be an offensive engine. There are just other guys on this list that I think have higher two-way impacts, and basically everybody on this list has a more imposing physical profile. And I don't say that to demean Dillon, because I think Dillon has a really good frame, 6'10" wingspan. He's pretty thick for a guard, like 6'5". Like, he's big, but there are other guys who I think I prefer their all-around impact and their frames as well. But this 9 through 11 range was kind of like a coin flip for me. I could have ordered Dillon, Amen, and Franz kind of in any order and been okay with it, but I'm really high on Dillon. I think he's going to be an all-star in this league. I think he's going to be an offensive engine, and I'm really high on him. So I would hear an argument for him even higher if you're really confident in those offensive skills panning out.
Look, man, I definitely like the case, and I respect the balls to put not just one, but 2 guys who actually haven't played NBA basketball yet on the list, because I do think that Dylan Harper is a great enough talent to justify that. I think that he is a very, very high-level guard prospect, and so much of what makes him great are traits that you really do expect to translate. Like, you're talking about the difference in rim scoring between him and a Cade Cunningham, and as much as rim volume, the difference is the finishing, where Dylan Harper is like one of the most skilled and effective below the rim finishing guard prospects we've seen in a long time. The guy shoots 68% at the rim on high volume, and he is elite in terms of getting to the free throw line 6 times a game. So he checks a ton of boxes. He also keeps turnovers low, even with high volume. I think he's a really good interior passer. No, he's not like maybe a conventionally elite passing prospect, but he does put so much stress on a defense with his downhill pressure. And I'll just say this, if Dylan Harper becomes a 37% three-point shooter on solid volume, that's an all-NBA player, at least. In fact, I think he could be all-NBA without being that good a shooter. I just think he has to be solid. And that's kind of going to be the swing trait for him, because we've seen some solid results off the catch. On ball, shot 29% on pull-up threes, which is not too bad a number, but it's not a good number. And he just didn't show us much of a floater game, wasn't efficient from mid-range. So just like some of those indicators for him as a jump shooter are looking very murky right now. And that's where, not having seen him actually play in an NBA regular season yet, I will leave him off my list, but like I said, I have no problem with you having him on here, and honestly, I like it because I always respect an upside play, and putting your nuts on the table for a dude who hasn't played in the NBA yet. Because, if you're a GM, man,
if I really put my nuts on the table, I could have put him at like 7 or 8 and really had the hot take.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been a huge balls play, but I think that you probably pushed it about as far as you reasonably can without causing some serious outrage, at least. Who is in your 8 spot, Logan?
I'm sitting here wondering if I should call an audible.
Oh.
The guy in my 6th spot is stamped
Okay.
because I think he's such a winner and what he did this last season. And so right now I'm debating. Right now I have Paolo in my 8th spot, and I'm debating if I should have Paolo here or if I should have Cade in my. Who should be higher, Cade or Paolo? Is really what I'm debating. Paolo
It's a
to me,
debate as old as time,
it
man.
really is, man. I think I'm comfortable with having Paolo at 8 and Cade at 7 right now, and I know this is a potential play, and that's what scares me about having Paolo this low because he is such a freak of nature, like 6'10", 250 pounds, fluid, can handle, can pass, can shoot. Like,
Hey, he loves to shoot.
and that's the problem. That's the problem with Paolo. That's why I would have Paolo higher if he got downhill more. Like, that's really the dilemma I'm facing right now because I think Cade gives you such elite, well-rounded value right now. And this is, I'm going to take this big picture and like long-term now. But for example, say Cade grew frustrated in Detroit and wanted to move on somewhere where like he was a number 2. Right? Or he had a co-star. Like, I think Cade's skill set is so malleable and would fit in different scenarios, and he would work as the number 1 as a floor raiser, but he would also work as a number 2 as a ceiling raiser because of his skill set. And I don't necessarily feel that way about Paolo just yet because he is so reliant on the jump shot, because he is so ball dominant, because he's not as impactful defensively as he could be, where I think Cade has realized more of that defensive potential than him.
For sure.
And so basically it's just the gap between what they could be and what they are right now is why I have Paolo in my 8th spot. Like, I just believe more in what Cade has realized than what Paolo could be. Now, I'm deathly afraid because Paolo fully realized is an unstoppable monster that is probably easily top 5, arguably top 3 on this list.
Whoa.
Like, I mean,
Wow.
I'm saying fully maxed out, man, like Paolo getting downhill a ton. That kind of like playmaking at a high level, knocking down shots, there's just a gap though, and I need to see it before I would be comfortable having Paolo higher on my list. I think he needs to be a better decision maker in terms of the shot selection. I think he needs to be more impactful as a defender and a rebounder. It's just things I need to see before I'm really confident in Paolo becoming what he could be. And with that, I think you touched on it a little bit with Franz, too. I have to mention this. I mean, Paolo is in a hellish situation. Like Cade, I'd like to see them add some more shooting. They had Desmond Bane. Hopefully that can be the catalyst that makes this offense jump into a different tier, that can unlock more of Paolo and Franz's playmaking and downhill pressure. We'll see. And so I think it's important that I mention how bad Orlando's situation is. But I'm just more confident in Cade bringing me that winning impact than I am Paolo right now, and that's ultimately why I decided to put Cade over Paolo. But this was probably my toughest decision that I had on the list.
I have Paolo at number 8 as well, and I have flipped on the Paolo versus Cade debate a couple times. I think I've gone back and forth, and I do think that it's pretty close, but Cade is certainly the better player right now, and I am just more confident in what he brings me than I am with Paolo because I'm not even as high on Paolo's ceiling as you are. Like, there's no world in which I was ever going to put Paolo higher than number 6 on this list. That, to me, was going to be the range. It was probably going to be somewhere between 6 and 8. Even understand that, like, yes, the tools are crazy, right? For him to be 6'10", 250, the level of, like, powerful force he can be downhill when he fully commits to consistently pressuring the rim. The guy draws free throws at such a ridiculous rate. And then to also have the level of ball handling skill, fluidity, shot making, passing that he does have, like, it's really impressive. But I do think it's important to note that, like, if Paolo ever became a very good jump shooter, I would be really surprised. Just because we have a really large sample of him right now. And yes, he is still young. Absolutely. He's only played 3 years in the league, but for as much as he loves the jumper and as much as he lives on this tough 2 heavy shot diet, especially, he shoots 41% on 2-pointers outside the restricted area. That's not a good number. He shoots 32% on threes. That's obviously not a good number. And like, these are numbers that are consistent across the 3 seasons. He's a 73% free throw shooter. That's a very mediocre number, below league average. So I just don't see the indicator that Paolo is going to suddenly become a very good jump shooter. If you want to say league average efficiency, sure, I can see him getting up to that point because he is still young. And if you want to talk about, oh, well, as somebody who can create his own shot, there's no question Paolo can shoot over top of you at will. I mean, he does it too much, but there's no question that like he has the needed ball handling size to get to quote unquote his spots from the mid-range, etc. I just don't view that as like the bread and butter of a very good offensive player. And that's where I just have such mixed feelings about Paolo compared to basically everybody else who we're going to talk about, because you do see the tools. You do see, I mean, already the ability to produce with raw volume like he does. There are some people who will fully downplay that, who will basically take the angle of like Paolo's not good. That to me is crazy. To try to diminish any third-year player who can average 26, 7, and 5 on 55% true shooting, who in a playoff series where like the offensive supporting cast outside of him and Franz, it's so inept. And yes, his efficiency absolutely leaves a lot to be desired, but he can still produce with that volume against a good defense. Like that is a skill in and of itself. He just really has to refine his game so he becomes more impactful, because right now, yes, he is very talented, but he is a ball dominant, ball stopping, inconsistent playmaking, inefficient scorer with below average defense. And even acknowledging the situation, as we always do have to because it's been so bad around them offensively, like Franz is the guy who is actually able to lead the Magic to be a good team offense when he's on the floor without Paolo. Paolo cannot do the same, vice versa. When Paolo's out there without Franz, they've got a 107 offensive rating. They're a negative 9.5 net team. His turnovers go crazy high to like 4.5 per 75 possessions. And you just have to watch and assess. Yes, there are possessions where, okay, Paolo is settling here because the paint is so preposterously packed, and that is a product of a situation. And then there are possessions where it's like, all right, Paolo has a mismatch. They've cleared the side. He could bully this guy, and instead he's settling for a 15-foot pull-up or turnaround. And that's just something that he really likes to do, and I would like to see him limit how dependent he is on the jump shooting, become more of that downhill force, become more consistent as a passer, because I think that's such an intriguing aspect of his game that we've seen these flashes of high-level playmaking, but also like in terms of consistency, the processing, the decision-making, the shot selection has to improve. I also think like he really is pretty clearly the worst defender for Orlando in a big role, and I just think with his physical tools, he should be better there. I don't think that you need him to be like a clear plus on that side of the ball, but I would like to see some improvement. But all in all, like the upside is still too high for me to have Paolo lower than this, because he is 22. And if he does strike that balance between downhill scoring and a little bit less being in love with the jump shooting, and if he just gets a little better as a jump shooter, and if he does get better as a passer and becomes one of the best playmaking forwards in basketball, which I don't know if I can say that's likely, but I do think it's possible, like that could be a top 10 kind of player. But I also see the outcome where these things don't get significantly better for Paolo, and he is never as impactful as maybe he could have been. And honestly, like, there's no question that if I were ranking NBA players right now, I would have Paolo above Amen. But if you were saying, like, all right, if they never get better, which I think is highly unlikely for both, but just for the thought exercise, like, who would you rather drop in to a situation for a team that's trying to win a title? I just think Amen's skill set scales better when it comes to impacting winning in a complementary way, whereas it's like Paolo, yes, he can carry the volume for a really bad offense right now, but there's still a really bad offense. Orlando was one of the worst offenses in basketball this year. He's not an engine, and he also isn't somebody who fits and complements and does the little things on either side of the ball. So he's just tricky, man. Paolo's a tricky guy to talk about. I think he's very talented, but I ended up just being more confident in what I'm getting from the guys in my 6 and 7 spots, their versatility, their impact, and that's why I leaned on them.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. I feel like the shot selection thing is going to iron itself out over like the next 3 years. Like, I would.
I
never,
hope so, man.
Well, what I mean by that is like I think we're going to know. I'm not saying that like I just think his tape is going to tell us over the next 2 to 3 seasons like This is a guy who is going to figure out how to use his body and get to those looks and become a wrecking ball, or he's going to be inefficient and he's going to continue settling and settling and settling, and that's just who he's going to be. I won't put a cap on his playmaking because we've even seen that with like older wings that when they get up into 27, 28, 29, like we could see a late blooming playmaking kind of leap from Paolo. So I wouldn't rule that out of the equation long term, but I really do think we're going to know what he is as a scorer over the next few seasons, and I think that'll ultimately, I don't know, be a huge determinant of, you know, where he ranks among these guys that you'd want to build around. If he belongs on this list, if he should be higher, or if he should be left off entirely. But I do still remain optimistic with Paolo.
I think you make a really good point about the playmaking progression, because that is something that often happens later. And Paolo, in the scheme of things, is ahead of schedule there. Like, as a rookie 6'10" guy, his passing was ahead of schedule. As a sophomore, it was ahead of schedule, averaging 5.5 assists a game as a 6'10", 21-year-old. Like, that's a pretty rare thing in the scope of NBA history. But I didn't think it got any better this past year. And the problem is, like, if you get him into a playoff series, at least a couple times we've seen it so far, where a lot of people, that's where they've been sold on Paolo. I think there's some outlier jump shooting that has to be acknowledged there, where all of a sudden he goes from a 32% three-point shooter to 42%. Like, you have to acknowledge the sample size there. I think that that's outlier jump shooting. But what concerns me is, like, he does really start icing his teammates out at times, and he does become very, very shoot first. And I get it if he doesn't trust his teammates right now, and hopefully putting better dudes around him will just make for a better situation where he is a more willing passer. But it's just a lot of inconsistency with Paolo in some of these areas. But you basically laid it out. I mean, it's the shot selection and it's the playmaking progression, and that's going to ultimately determine where he justifies his value on this list, how high he actually should be on this list if we look at it in a decade and have the crystal ball of retrospect. I'll talk about Cade, even though I don't have him at 7, just because you made that comparison. I actually have Cade up at number 6, and I consider myself to be very much a Cade realist, in the sense that 2024, a lot of people were very down on Cade. I was defending him. I was saying this situation is actually dystopian, what the 2024 Pistons were putting around him on the basketball court. Consistently, like 4 inept offensive players alongside him. Cade's very talented. The situation will improve. He'll start to look better. The team will start performing better. Then last year that happened, and as you hinted at, all of a sudden now it's like, ooh, Cade fringe MVP talks. Cade top 10 player kind of fringe talks. And that to me was just all way premature, because he does have some core limitations, even as a very good offensive player. Protecting the ball right now is very bad from Cade. He averaged 4.5 turnovers a game in the regular season, 5.3 in the playoffs. I think, honestly, the handle just needs to be better. There are like some flat out bad turnovers from him that are related to ball handling, where it's not just like, oh, he has this crazy offensive load. There are some very preventable turnovers that other high-level guards just do not commit. That has to get better. And the thing that has always been the limiter for Cade in my eyes is just the fact that he does not produce easy offense for himself. There is a lack of burst with him, and there is a limitation in overall, like, high-end quickness, vertical athleticism, where getting to and finishing at the rim is a struggle for him. And if you look at the regular season, he shot 56% in the restricted area. That is a very bad number, especially for a 6'6" star guard. That is a terrible number. And then in the playoffs, it was worse, 48% in the restricted area, which is insane. And then he also has the lack of, like, volume, high efficiency three-point shooting, where he's gotten a little bit better as a three-point shooter, made an improvement there this past year, but nevertheless, he's only giving you 5-6 three-point attempts a game, making 35-36% of them, and in the playoffs, his three-ball totally left him too. And so even though he was able to produce with volume and did some really impressive stuff in that playoff series with a huge offensive burden on him, a lot of the shooting splits were just brutal. The turnovers were brutal. And so that's always going to be the thing with Cade. It's like, how much can he overcome these limitations to be a more efficient offensive player, to be a higher level offensive engine? I don't think I'm the highest on that. I don't see Cade as somebody who's ever going to be a future MVP or like firmly in the MVP conversation like some people do. But I do think Cade does a lot that I really, really like. I mean, he is a 6'6", 220 guard with great strength who is absolutely one of the better mid-range shot makers and shot creators in basketball right now, which is a valuable skill set, especially when you get to the playoffs and teams are loading up defensively. And you get to a clutch situation, like to be able to get to those spots and make those shots with solid efficiency is very valuable. Cade does have that. He has a mismatch attacking dimension to his offense that is pretty rare for a point guard just because he's not built like a point guard. I don't consider him one of the elite passers in basketball. I don't think his accuracy is quite there, but I do consider him to be a very, very good passer and certainly somebody who can float a very heavy playmaking load for your offense. And then I think an underratedly intriguing part of Cade's profile is that he has really awesome defensive tools because like he's built like a good size wing defensively. He was one of the most effective rim protecting wings in basketball this regular season, like legitimately good in that role as a helper. And then you get to the playoffs and he had a couple of awesome moments defensively and he averaged more than 3 stocks a game in that series. He has matchup versatility. He can guard the post with his strength. So like the ability to not just be passable defensively, but be an actual positive is rare from any guard who you look at as an offensive engine in today's NBA, even if I don't think he'll ever be one of the upper echelon offensive engines because he doesn't have those elite A-plus traits that the great offensive engines do. Nevertheless, like he can take on that volume. He did improve Detroit's offense by a good bit this season, and he did that in a situation where there were huge expectations placed on him, a huge burden to be a creator. So that's where, even though Paolo has more physical advantages, which I do value, right? The 6'10", 250 of it all, the insane foul drawing ability that Paolo has. You see a path to an offensive ceiling there, but I'm just more confident in Cade because of the decision-making, because of the playmaking, because of the ability to amplify others. And honestly, another area in which I think we have to give Cade some credit and some benefit of the doubt is like, if you put him with a great play finishing big, if you put him with an elite scoring wing, I think you said it, like, Cade is just not a number one scorer. He doesn't have that skill set. I understand he averaged 26 a game, but the efficiency is really not very good, and I've talked about his limitations, but if you paired him with somebody who he could build a two-man game like that with, who could be the 28-point-per-game scorer for them efficiently, I think he would make that guy better, and then you're getting the playmaking. You're getting still good scoring value from Cade. You're getting the defense, which is a solid component in this. Like, I see a gap between Cade and Paolo defensively, and so I just view Cade as the more complete player. And I understand if you want to take the upside play with Paolo. I have made that argument before. A year ago, I think I made that argument. I was slightly on the Paolo side. Now, with the improvement that Cade has made, and with kind of what I view as a stagnant year from Paolo, and just some of the flaws that still haven't gotten better with him, I just feel more confident in Cade. So he does have the slight edge for me.
Yeah, and I feel like Cade has actually improved in a lot of the areas that we were concerned about. I mean, again, I think the largest improvement from Detroit was the fact that they put competent basketball players around him. But we have seen him improve as a three-point shooter over the past 2 years where he was kind of abysmal. I think he has marginally improved as a playmaker. I don't like the fact that he doesn't get all the way downhill, but I do like the fact that he's at least carved himself out an intermediate game in that paint non-restricted area where – looking down the line, that should be a shot that he can bank on in the playoffs because of his elite size and strength. Like, I get that every game was kind of up and down with Cade against the Knicks, but like when he was matched up against a smaller guard like Jalen Brunson, for example, like that's a matchup he should be able to exploit at a high level as a scorer in the playoffs, and that's a valuable tool to have in your toolkit. And again, another thing over Paolo, I feel like Cade, his impact is multifaceted. If he was your number one, he's a really solid offensive engine that can lead you to, you know, the playoffs or a 45 to 50 win kind of season. But if he was your number two, would be an awesome co-star for a championship team potentially. Like, and it's just been more fully realized with Cade where he, for lack of a better term, in my opinion, gets it. I don't really think Paolo gets it just yet. And I'm not saying he won't, but Cade definitely does. And so Cade's in my 7 spot. I do have him 1 spot behind you, though. I know you said he's in your 6 spot.
I'm excited to talk about that next fella because I know who it's going to be. I think that you touched on it, though. Like, even though I think Cade was very underrated in 2024, and I think he was playing awesome down the stretch of that year, he did get a little bit better as a three-point shooter. He got a little bit more efficient as a scorer overall. Like, definitely 56.5% true shooting leaves something desired when you're comparing him to the best, but understanding the offensive situation, like, that's passable efficiency, the intermediate game being as good as it was, where he's 50% in the paint outside the restricted area, 45% from mid-range. He is so good at so much. It's just, again, the lack of some of those A-plus traits creating easy offense where I'm not as high on Cade as maybe the raw box score counting stats, maybe some of the aesthetics of it all because he's the big guard who's got the tough shot making. I think some people maybe need a bit of a reality check there, but Cade is really awesome, and I do really like him a lot. You have who in your number 6 spot, Logan? I believe it's the guy who I have in my number 7 spot.
I don't know.
Is it Jalen Williams?
Oh, it is J-Dub.
Okay.
I thought you were teeing me up for. I thought you had Cooper Flagg in that spot. Okay, I do have J-Dub in my 6th spot, and I went back and forth with this one for a minute too. I still feel like there's a major gap between Cade and J-Dub as defenders. I think J-Dub is just phenomenal. Cade's a really good defender, but the stuff that J-Dub can do as a help side rim protector and as a real like paint deterrent, like Cade's great, but he's not that kind of defender. And like J-Dub is so deceptively fucking strong, man. Like watching him in these playoffs wall up like against Spicy P or Julius Randle, and it was just
Triple
awesome.
J. Jokic.
Yeah,
he was one of their counters for like every single time they went up against that big mismatch attacking forward center.
And
it was like, all right, we're putting J-Dub on you.
They take one look at him and they go, oh, J-Dub's 6'5", probably what, 220, 230 maybe? Like
yeah, 220.
He's strong, don't get me wrong, but I think people looked at him and thought it was going to be sweet on the low block, and J-Dub was locking shit up. I was about to go off the cuffs here. I was going to say it was Dre-esque. I can't say anything's Draymond-esque.
He's got the Dre measurables. He's 6'5" with a 7'2" wingspan.
I'm just saying, like, when you're that kind of compact, strong athlete and you can wall up against these behemoths of men, it's really rare, and it's really, really valuable, especially when J-Dub is a really talented offensive player as well. I often wonder what J-Dub would be doing if he was in a situation like Orlando or if he was, like, the number one option. Like, do you think J-Dub would be like a 25-point-per-game scorer if he was like the number one option?
In Orlando?
I don't know. I mean, like if he was...
I mean, maybe 25 points per game on 50
I'm not saying
53% true shooting. He's not meant to be a number one option. There is no situation in which I would look at any offense in the league where J-Dub is the number one option and say I feel good about that.
I agree, but I think that may be why he's kind of underrated in the sense that, like, he is a damn good scoring option as a number two. We saw the guy put really 40 points up in a well, I just mean because he's not going to have the volume production that people may look at and go, wowza, he's putting up 26 like Cade or something like that, and I feel like because we are so obsessed with the raw numbers that he may get underrated in that regard, but J-Dub is so good at getting to that intermediate, like mid-range, off-the-dribble shot near the elbow, right inside the arc. It is such a bread-and-butter look for him, and he didn't even shoot it that well in these playoffs. Like, he had a pretty good playoff run overall. I'd say a really good playoff run overall, but there were peaks and valleys. He, again, did have a 40-point game in the playoffs, but he consistently can get to that look with such ease, and then when he is getting fully downhill, which he's really good at, he's a good finisher with both hands. Like, J-Dub's got a really well-rounded inside-the-arc scoring game, and he was a really good three-point shooter this year. It didn't fully realize itself in the playoffs where he was down a little bit, but he's a pretty good shooter too. I just think that J-Dub brings you really complete value. He is one of the elite defenders on the planet. I think he is an all-defense kind of guy and has damn near unparalleled versatility in the game today. It is such a rare skill set to be that kind of post defender and rim protector while also being a high-level perimeter defender and a pretty solid rebounder. And then he is a damn good number two scoring option. And I think he's going to get better. Like, that is why I have J-Dub up here. I don't think he could do what Cade does, because I don't think he's the kind of playmaker that Cade is. I just think there's a big gap there. But what I will say is that J-Dub just does bring you that like complete winning impact. And I do think he can get more consistent as a pull-up jump shooter. I think he can get better as a finisher and downhill pressurer. And I think he can get better as a playmaker. Like, I still think there's room for improvement really across the board for J-Dub. And he's still bringing you complete value already. So I debated between the two, but ultimately I really do prefer that A1 kind of defensive rare skill set from J-Dub. And that's what gave him the edge to me over Cade.
He's Mr. Versatile, man. Like, it is just so impressive every way in which he impacts the game. And I do think that it's always important to really hammer on the defensive value point here, because we just tend collectively to look at box scores first, offense, whatever. That's just kind of the average basketball fan mindset. But J-Dub is like a transformative defensive player. He happens to play on a team with multiple transformative defenders, but one of the best rim protecting wings in basketball, one of the best backline defending non-bigs in basketball, just like supreme defensive IQ and instincts, insane measurables. Again, a 7'2" wingspan, really, really good motor for somebody who does have the offensive load that he does as well. Phenomenal hands when it comes to generating steals. Crazy matchup versatility. He's not going to ever duck any matchup that he's asked to take on, as we talked about, the range that he's willing to accept. You can switch him on anybody and he can hold his own. Like, he is so awesome on that side of the ball. And then offensively, he also gives you 22, 5, and 5 on solid efficiency. And even more than that, what I like is the versatility offensively. I mean, J-Dub is one of the best transition scorers in basketball. That is supremely valuable in OKC, where they love to play fast. They love turning defense into offense. He loves turning defense into offense. He's great at that. He's got really good off-ball feel as a cutter. He is one of the better cutting stars in basketball for sure. Also, pretty darn good catch and shooter overall. Like, yes, the three ball was a little bit more up and down this year than we're used to, and especially in the playoffs, but he's still a 38% career three-point shooter, and so that is a positive trait of his. And then he's a three-level scorer on ball, and no, he is not a supreme advantage creator. No, he isn't somebody who gets the easiest offense for himself, but he's very good at shifting gears. He's very good from the mid-range, and yes, sometimes he can fall a little bit too in love with that, but he tends to be pretty good there. And when you balance that with the fact that he's a pretty good three-point shooter, downhill, he's a pretty good scorer. Again, has some limitations when it comes to like volume paint scoring. But as the playoffs went along, like deep in the playoffs, as he got more confident about physically committing to getting all the way to the rim, playing through physicality, trying to get to the line more, like all that stuff translated. And I did think that was when he played his best offense and his free throw rate skyrocketed. And like there is a floor that comes with that commitment to getting downhill where he's not as dependent on the mid-range stuff that I really like. And then he's also a really good passer. So again, this is just a guy who does so much at least a B level. When you pair that with A defense, he's already a top 20 level player. I know he doesn't have as much room to grow as a Paolo, I wouldn't say, as a Cade. But right now, if you said, okay, who's the guy you want on your team to win a title, it's J-Dub.
And I don't think that should be a knock at him, right? Because he's further along in his development, you know?
And I also think he still does have room to improve. And like, I think he can put it all together more consistently than he did in this past playoff run, which was still quite impressive overall. But like with a more consistent commitment to getting all the way downhill, if he just shoots the three at the level that he's capable of over the entirety of a run, another thing that he does that I like, he keeps turnovers low. And so I just think he is a supremely impactful basketball player. And sure, I see more upside with a Paolo. I also see more downside with a Paolo because of some of the flaws that he has that are still quite prevalent. There is no world in which I don't love Jalen Williams on my team. And I know that I said that about like an Amen too, but we're talking about different levels where, okay, yeah, Amen, I know right now can give me top 50 impact. That's the floor. J-Dub right now can give me top 20 impact and is an awesome number 2 for a contending kind of team. So I do slightly prefer that to Paolo. With Cade, I guess it just comes down to the combination of being able to be a pretty good offensive engine and impact the game in multiple ways, where again, he's more complete than Paolo. I trust him more in all these areas. And being a positive defender, there's a big gap between J-Dub and Cade defensively, but I also think there's a big gap between Cade and Paolo defensively. And so I think Cade, to me, probably strikes the overall best balance of current value, upside, and I do think absolutely could be the number one for a really good team in a way that I can't see with J-Dub, but J-Dub is pretty much the dream number 2. So he is locked into my 7 spot. J-Dub over Paolo. There you have it, folks. The people love that debate. Actually, nobody ever seems to have fun with it. Everybody always just gets mad about it. But
I've seen more
J-Dub.
people move to the J-Dub side, though, man.
Yeah, I love J-Dub. I really do love J-Dub. He is a winner. Let's get into the top 5, Logan. Who's in your 5th spot?
I've got Cooper Flagg here.
Okay.
I would hear an argument probably for Flagg if you wanted to, like all the way up to number 3. The top 4 are just such solid known commodities to me. And number 4 and 3, maybe like 2 of the more offensively limited players on this list, they still have a world of growth potential in their game. So that's why I'm just so sure about the top 4. And this is meant in no way to disrespect Cooper Flagg. That's why he's 5. I'm pretty damn sure about Cooper Flagg, too. I think you're getting a guy who gives you complete value across the board defensively and offensively. One, like you mentioned with J-Dub, we'll start. You have to talk about defense when you're talking about evaluating Cooper Flagg's special traits and ability and what makes him the kind of player that he is. He has a special defensive combination of an ability to protect the perimeter and to protect the rim at a really high level, where it's going to be a little weird in Dallas in year 1 where he is playing the 3, but he's probably more natural of a 4. It's going to make Dallas more athletic, more monstrous in size, and maybe even more destructive. Like, that is a crazy front line to have with Flagg, Davis, and one of those big men, whoever they want to go with, if it's Gafford or if it's Lively. But Flagg more naturally is probably in that 4 spot where he is an elite help side rim protector, and he's a pretty good straight-up rim protector, too. He's got really good size. He's a great frame, 6'9", 220, and he's really agile, too. And then offensively, he's really, really strong, man, for a rookie. And that's probably the area where I'm most excited for him, is just what he's going to do athletically with his physical traits. He is a problem in the open floor in attacking closeouts. Like, I think Flagg is going to be a really high-end number 2 or number 3. If you get him that high-end advantage creator, I think you saw a little bit of it in Summer League. I don't want to make too much of Summer League, but you see it. You create the initial advantage, you swing it to him, and he gives a little jab step or something and is in the lane and yamming on somebody. Or you get a defensive stop, and he is immediately turning defense into offense in the open floor and jumping out the gym and dunking. And so I think he's got a really good complementary skill set. Really, I think the thing that's going to determine it for Coop and how high he can climb on this list is that on-ball and self-creation, where I think he has the most room to grow. I think he's a good shooter. Again, that's more off the catch, though, where I'm going to need to see him be a high-end shooter off of the dribble. He's got a good handle for a guy his size, but it's not like an elite NBA kind of handle where I think it needs to be tightened. He's a good playmaker, but not a great playmaker just yet. And so, again, his complementary skill sets and all that is so strong, and his IQ and his feel, it's so advanced for a rookie. To me, it really is all that on-ball and self-creation kind of stuff that it is going to determine how high he can be on this list. And I don't know. I'm really high on the self-creation stuff. That's why I'm sitting here debating if he should be higher.
The man who had Cooper Flagg as a top 4 small forward in the NBA as a rookie is now a little bit lower on him for the long-term list than I would have thought. Well, I know how high you probably are on the guys in the top 4, sure.
Man.
I agree. I have Flagg 1 spot higher, though. I have him at number 4.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
Do you have the Mobler in 5?
No. I have Mobley somewhere else that I won't reveal. I have Chet at 5, and we'll get to him in a second.
You have Chet below Mobley.
Yes, my two darling baby
That
boys, both
fascinates
of
me,
whom
man.
I was absolutely in love with as a prospect, both of whom I thought were the clear number one guys in their class, both of whom I've planted my flag so firmly on. Here's what it comes down to. Oh, if I can simplify. This is supposed to be about Cooper Flagg. I guess I'll talk about Mobley and Chet for 1 second, though. I just think that Mobley is on a very positive offensive trajectory when it comes to him developing his strength. I think his processing and passing has just translated better than Chet's. I think he's closed the shooting gap
I
some
mean,
and
what about the
availability.
what about the fluidity and the creation? Like,
The ball handling, yes, I
there's a
agree. I think
huge
that that's
gap
where
there to me
Chet.
still, where like Chet can get shifty and get low. Mobley's more of a I need
I don't
a
disagree at all.
open runway to the hoop kind of guy, you know?
I don't disagree at all. What I would say is Chet has an availability concern that I do not have with Flagg or Mobley. Where, as much as I hope that it is never a problem, he has played 114 games since he was drafted 3 years ago. Regular season, he's held up for 2 full playoff runs. That's kind of the tiebreaker for me when it really comes down to it. I don't agree that, like, even though I've been maybe more impressed with like Mobley's offensive improvement this past year, I still think that Chet has the higher offensive ceiling because of the fluidity aspect. Because even though, again, Mobley has shrunk the gap as a shooter, Chet still is clearly the better shooting talent to me. But that's not what we're talking about right now, Logan. I'm talking about why I have Cooper Flagg in my number 4 spot. I just think he is like the epitome of one of the most valuable archetypes in basketball, which is the uber versatile forward. Jason Tatum is the guy we consider right now the most versatile player in the NBA. I think that Cooper Flagg could be the guy who takes that title and who is that
He's the
guy
new
for the next
anomaly, bro.
generation. He could be the new anomaly, man. Couple of Duke boys, couple of anomalies. He's just so good at everything, basically. And I don't think he'll be the level of score that Tatum is, where Tatum has had 30-point per game seasons, just because I do think you said it well. There isn't that level of ball handling right now, not that level of pull-up shooting, not that level of a first step. Those are kind of the questions with Flagg. What can he be as a true high-level on-ball offensive player? But that's like the only question I have about him when it comes to high-level impact. And I still think he's going to be pretty damn good there. I just don't think he'll be one of the elite scorers of the basketball. But defensively, insane secondary rim protection, help defense for a guy who is going to be playing small forward. The size is ridiculous for that. The rebounding is phenomenal. Just everything. Hands, length, defensive IQ, motor, obviously the vertical athleticism. He is going to be one of the 10 best defenders on the planet. I feel like I can pretty confidently say that. And he's going to be most valuable as a team defender, as a helper, but he's also a really good one-on-one defender who, when it comes to guarding forwards, has a shit ton of matchup versatility. And then offensively, we can talk about what is the absolute ceiling with the on-ball stuff. The floor is ridiculously high because he's got fantastic feel, great connective passer, I think phenomenal instincts as a cutter where he is a lethal play finisher. Just somebody who, with his improvement as a catch and shooter, which was significant this past year. Like, I agree, we can have questions about the pull-up shooting. The shooting off the catch was quite good. The free throw numbers are really good. The touch is there for him to be a legitimately good shooter. That's where I just love the complementary stuff. I think he's somebody who is willing to be a screener and has potential as a roll man, has a potential as a short roll playmaker. And then you do get to the on-ball stuff, and yeah, we can nitpick it, and I think that's the question. And that's where Flagg is going to get tested a lot, especially as a rookie with Kyrie out. Probably going to be too much on his plate there early on, but he was still a 90th percentile pick and roll creator in college, is a very effective driver who has a decent pull-up shooting game as a counter. The body control with his frame, with his size, the ability to get to the line at a really high rate, like that's impressive. I do think he's a gifted passer for his size and age, making some skips, making the kick out passes. That is really impressive to me for a guy who is still 18 years old, man. I don't know if we can really beat that drum enough. He just went out there and had one of the great college freshman seasons we've seen in recent years as one of the youngest freshman to do it. I mean, 19, 7.5, and 4 with 3 stocks on 48, 39, 84 splits, and he is that young. But I also really like the mismatch attacking potential with him as a big forward, physically imposing himself, 97th percentile post-up creator in college, dominant transition scoring potential. I think he can be really good there. So it's just that like supreme versatility where I am so confident in him being a very impactful basketball player. And even though I am still a Chet truther, let's not get that twisted. I'm a huge believer. I think all of these dudes in my top 5 are going to be top 10 players. I am a little bit more confident in Flagg right now because I think the offensive gap between him and Chet probably slightly exceeds the defensive gap. And then the other thing is just the availability of it. And also, I've got 5 more years of Cooper Flagg. He's 5 years younger. Like, that's where maybe he should be number 3 on my list, man. Just because as an asset, I've got so much time with him. And he's already going to be so impactful as a rookie. And he's still got so much room to grow from there. I don't know, man. I'm closer to talking myself into Flagg at 3 than I am Flagg at 5, to be honest.
You're making me think about it.
I love Evan Mobley so much. I really do. But Flagg is
you know what?
Awesome.
I'm going to stand pat right here for this reason because Coop is 18, and I can come back in a year and say, actually, I'm going to move him up here. So that'll be my cop-out for today. I can move Coop and Dylan Harper up next year if we do this list again.
The classic Logan Camden strategy.
You got to hedge. You got to hedge your bets. You got to hedge your bets.
Wait, no, I messed that up. I actually said the strategy that makes sense. Your strategy is to buy high, sell low. And I love that about you.
That's how you make money.
Harper, you put your nuts on the table.
That's how you make money.
Like.
The league's just so talented, man. I mean, you could order these guys almost any way you want. I think 1 and 2 are stamped, in my opinion, but 5 through 3, very, very competitive. So you have Chet 5, Coop 4, Mobley 3. I have Coop 5, Mobley 4, Chet 3.
Okay, let's talk about Chet then, because I am the ultimate Chet Glazer. When he came out in the draft, I thought that he was the best prospect that we had seen since Anthony Davis. Keep in mind, I was also very, very high on Mobley the year prior, but I view Chet as kind of an escalation within the same archetype where both of these guys were incredibly impressive defensive prospects, right? Really high-level switchability with elite rim protection. Chet was just the even better rim protector. I mean, when you're talking about legit 7'1" with a 7'6" wingspan, incredible timing, instincts, one of the most impressive collegiate rim protecting talents that we've seen all century. And then you pair that with the defensive versatility and the offensive skill, where I have always seen a different level of jump shooting, fluidity, ball handling potential from him. I mean, the quickness that Chet does have. You mentioned it, the ability to get low on drives and the body control on spins and all that shit for being 7'1". It is unicorn shit. And so that's why I've always been so extremely high on him. And at the same time, he can be this super efficient play finisher. I wish that he just set harder screens and rolled more, because as an above the rim target, I mean, he's just so massive. And once he decided to start dunking everything in these playoffs, which he actually stopped doing for a time in the finals, but like when he's aggressive above the rim, he can be so efficient there with the jump shooting. I guess I'm going to say it mostly comes down to availability, because I think that Chet is the better defensive player than Mobley. And as great as Mobley is, that's pretty clear. Chet is like a totally unbelievable defensive player. What he did in these playoffs to me was one of the most impressive individual postseason runs we've seen, where like in his individual matchups across ISOs and post-ups, players averaged like 0.6 points per possession when they went at Chet. Ridiculous. And then as a rim protector, he's like the best that there is, and he's holding opposing players like 14% below their average field goal percentage at the basket. That shit is so crazy. And I'm also optimistic about his offense. Like I am. I think that you have to understand the guy broke his pelvis midway through the season, came back, wasn't the same offensively, but the Chet that we saw over those first 9 games before he got hurt, the level of confidence downhill as a driver, getting to the free throw line, operating from the nail, attacking off the catch, getting to the mid-range. Like, he was playing like a star offensively. So maybe the ceiling is still higher. I just think like Mobley had an incredible season, and Mobley took the leap to the place where it's like he was the best player on a 64-win team. And I don't want to overreact too much to the playoff sample, but I did think that Mobley's offense held up better in the playoffs than Chet. So I guess it's just Mobley is further along right now, and I have zero availability concerns. Chet, I do still think has the higher absolute ceiling, but I guess the other things offset that by a little bit.
I mean, I think I agree with the availability thing, and then with Mobley, I do think we saw him take a major step forward offensively, kind of in all areas, ball handling, playmaking, spacing the floor, comfort, like just getting to shots, like and not being hesitant. And, I mean, the big thing with the playoffs is I think Mobley's strength is always going to translate because he is so much stronger than Chet.
Mm-hmm.
With Chet, though, I just feel like we're still scratching the surface with what he could be offensively, with the bend and the handle, and it's freakish. It's like, again, unicorn stuff. It really is with Chet. We're like, this guy is so freaking tall, he should not be able to handle like this. And, you know, I think Chet is going to get stronger. I don't know if he'll ever, like, fill out like Mobley. Like, I'm not saying Chet's going to have, like, a Giannis kind of. He's just going to get rocked up automatically and be swole.
I mean, Chet has one of the skinniest frames I've ever seen. His shoulders are narrow.
I think Chet's going to get bigger. Like, I think he'll gradually get bigger and he'll become more physical. I'm not saying he's ever going to be, like, swole or rocked up or like that, but I think he can be more physically imposing. And even though, like, even if he doesn't, he still is so good with the finesse stuff, and, like, he's so tall and long. Like, that didn't even affect him going to the rim now. So, like, I understand the availability concerns, but I kind of feel like that's part of my argument with Chet, where I go, well, we haven't seen him. So I guess you can look at this as a negative or positive, depending on what lens you view it through. I view it as we haven't seen the guy stack enough time together to really develop aspects of his game where when he does, he is going to get that much better. And I just still feel like there's such a gap between Mobley and Chet in terms of coordination and fluidity offensively that I do prefer Chet. Like, I don't think Mobley's ever going to have the kind of handle that Chet does. I don't know if Mobley's going to ever have that kind of fluidity that Chet does. And Mobley's still great offensively in spite of that, but that is why I prefer Chet. And I think he's going to blossom offensively.
Well, you know, I'm extremely, extremely high on both of these guys. I would put the difference a little bit more in terms of pure quickness than fluidity, even though I also do agree that Chet is more fluid. Like, Mobley has gotten pretty damn good as a ball handler. And I agree that there is an aspect of, like, okay, Chet can just get low. I think Chet has the opportunity for the more dynamic handle. But when you look at, like, the actual responsibilities they took on as perimeter creators and ball handlers, like, it was Mobley who was so effective pushing in transition, a little bit more so than Chet. It was Mobley who was really running a lot of inverted pick and roll and, like, making very good decisions doing so. And the other thing is, I think Chet does have still, again, more quickness, more fluidity, more perimeter scoring upside, and that is dazzling. Man, I love it. But also, like, Mobley is kind of the more functional offensive player right now just because, okay, he runs inverted pick and roll, he gets a switch, he doesn't have to necessarily try to, like, break you down off the dribble, get past you, whatever. Like, he can put his back to the basket at that point, and he can attack a mismatch with solid effectiveness because he's built out his strength to that point. He's built out his post game to the point where, no, it's not great, but it's very solid. Chet really still has no post game to speak of. He doesn't have that ability to impose himself physically. And the biggest difference...
I don't disagree with that, but again, we're talking about, like, right now.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I just think if you are comparing where they're at now to the expectations I would have had as prospects, I feel better about the trajectory Mobley has been on because I thought, okay, Chet, yes, definitely has the higher offensive ceiling. And now I look at it and I'm like, okay, if you get Chet into a hyper-physical playoff environment, he can struggle because he's so dependent in trying to beat you off the dribble with his quickness. And if his handle is really being tested, if he's dealing with ball pressure, and if they're allowing physicality on ball, and, like, he's struggling to get past you, he can kind of shrivel up to some extent. Whereas I feel like there are more counters built in with Mobley. And I think probably the biggest difference between them as offensive players right now, the strength is one, the passing, man. Like, that's where I think I've been disappointed with Chet. I viewed him as a pretty good passing prospect for a big. I thought that was a strength for both of these guys. It's absolutely been a strength for Mobley. And I guess with Chet, I just saw more spots this year where I'm like, okay, the processing isn't what it needs to be. And there is some tunnel vision. And maybe you could argue part of that is utilization, like it being such a point of emphasis for the Cavs to have Mobley doing more as a ball handler, as a playmaker. But he did really well in that role. And then in the playoffs, obviously both of them are going to run into some issues, just like when you ratchet up the level of defenses they're facing and the defensive intensity, because like they are these 7-footers in their early 20s who are trying to handle against these great defenses. And like, they still just have some limitations there, but Mobley's the guy who was still able to give you 17 a game, 70% true shooting, which is insane efficiency, actually somehow looked more comfortable and shot the ball better than Chet, which again, I don't think is going to be the case big picture. I just think that Chet is the better shooter, but Chet has had some playoff issues as a shooter that I didn't anticipate, where just the shot can be a little bit flat for him at times. He leaves it short. He can kind of get out of rhythm and maybe lose a little confidence. Mobley was shooting that shit against contests. Like, that's a big leap that he made this year. So I have no problem with you having Chet higher. I'm just explaining where I think Mobley has progressed in a wildly impressive way. And I agree with everything you're saying about give Chet a full season, allow him to put things together with a healthy offseason, really get in a rhythm. There's still such a great offensive ceiling there. But when I also do worry about his body holding up compared to Mobley's, like, I just feel a little more confident in what I'm getting from Mobley.
Both studs, though.
Yeah, because I don't want to downplay, like, what Mobley is when it comes to ball handling, fluidity,
no, it's impressive.
From a 7-footer.
He took a leap 2 years ago, and then he took another leap last year. Like, I was already impressed with him 2 years ago, and then Atkinson steps in, and you're seeing him run the inverted pick and roll. You're seeing him push in transition, and there is a different level of confidence that I get with Mobley, where Mobley was passive, Mobley was scared, Mobley would, like you said, kind of with Chet, like he would shrivel up sometimes and couldn't attack mismatches at a high level, and all of those questions that you had about Mobley are kind of just gone. And actually, that is the one aspect that I don't want to undersell when I'm talking about my ranking of Mobley either. Neither of these guys are anywhere close to being finished products.
Yeah.
Like, the areas that I'm talking about checking and improving, Mobley still has all that room too. Like, Mobley's not done by any means either. That's what's so crazy about both of these freaks of nature, man.
I actually think probably the most compelling point just for Chet right now is how insane he is defensively. Because even though Mobley is a great defensive player, and I know maybe this sounds funny when I'm saying, yeah, the argument for Chet is defensive over the defensive player of the year, they're both very switchable. I give Mobley a slight edge there in terms of his ability to move his feet, deal with wings. I think the strength in terms of matchup versatility, where he can like be thrown on big forwards, and he has all the traits you need to guard those guys, while he's also a high-level rim protector. He's incredible defensively. But Chet is also super switchable, did some wildly impressive stuff there this year. And the rim protection gap is real. Like, Chet is one of the best rim protectors in NBA history. Mobley is very good. He's not that. Chet held opposing players like 19% below their average at the rim this regular season. Mobley was at like a good number, like 10%, I want to say. And so that's where I do view Chet as the more transformative defensive player. And with his offensive upside, I see the case. I do want to just emphasize why I'm so high on both these guys, why we're so high on both these guys, because I know there will be some people who think, okay, what the hell? Cade Cunningham puts up 26, 6, and 10. Why is he not higher than these guys? I am extremely high generally on the archetype of the game-changing defensive big who is also very versatile and efficient offensively. I think that when you can anchor one side of the ball and then still be a strong positive on the other, I mean, that's just an incredible thing to be. And I think that the gap between Mobley and Chet as defensive players, how transformative they are on that side of the ball compared to what Cade is as an offensive player, like, I think it's a clearing. I think those are guys who are top tier defensively, and Cade is not at that level as an offensive player. He's really not that close. And then I also do think that Mobley and Chet do a lot of really good stuff offensively, and as you said, have the opportunity to just continue to get even better on that side of the ball. I love them both, man. I will die for them both. I will battle for them both. Right now, I think it's the Mobley stock that's highest. I do. But we're getting into the top 2 now, Logan, and now we're on to your baby boy. Who's in your 2 spot?
I would die for Anthony Edwards too, man. And send me into battle, man.
It's beautiful.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, I think these were our top 2 last year too, right? I think these guys have...
Yeah, well, I can't remember. Did we do under 25 last year? I know that Wemby was my number 1 building block when we did the list in January, and Ant was my next highest player who was under 25.
I believe last time we did this, these were our top 2, and they stand pat. Ant has really developed in a special way, and he was really raw as a college player, and the first really big step for him was becoming that elite downhill rim pressure where, I mean, he's just a crazy athlete. He's a great finisher through traffic. He had some issues in the playoffs, I will say, this year finishing through traffic. It was a little uncharacteristic for him, but that was the first step for him. And then the second step we saw this last year was the introduction of him really taking a bunch of threes per game off the dribble and hitting them at such a high clip for most of the year. Was it near 40% on 10 attempts a game? Stuff that only the best shooters in basketball history have ever done. And, you know, I think that added a very important dimension of the game for Ant, that kind of pull-up shooting to weaponize with that downhill pressure. As we've talked about, the next step for Ant really is just weaponizing his playmaking even more, becoming a more consistent playmaker, I would say, because he has his moments where I'll sing it from the mountaintops that this guy is a good playmaker some games, and he can make those skip passes and those good decisions, and he can collapse defenses at a high level. But the next step for him is to build onto the playmaking foundation that he has, and then add in that intermediate kind of pull-up mid-range game where we talked about this throughout the playoffs. I think Ant was like a 32% mid-range shooter in the playoffs, like something just horrific.
There was a time where he was like 1 of 16, and then it got better from there. But
yeah, and it's like
he ended up as a 30% mid-range shooter in the playoffs.
When you watch defenses defend him, that's what they are deliberately trying to bait him into doing. A pull-up three-point shot is a great look for Anthony Edwards. A shot at the rim is a great look for Anthony Edwards. A shot in the mid-range, defense wins. Like that is, and that's the thing. It's like with superstars like SGA, like Jokic, there's never a moment where you as a defense are grabbing your handkerchief, so to speak, and wiping and going, he let us off the hook, right? Jokic is never going to let you off the hook. SGA is never going to let you off the hook. Ant can, and that's the final area where it's like if he can develop and bring that intermediate game and have that counter to when teams are running that drop coverage or for double teams, like when he can finally eliminate that from his game, a area where the defense can go, that's the shot we want him to take, Ant's really going to be complete as an offensive player. I still do feel like there's a little bit of a gap defensively when we're talking about Ant between what he is and what he could be. I feel like his engagement level can wane sometimes, and I feel like some people sometimes just pencil him in as this kind of elite defender because of Minnesota's team defense, which I feel like is way more powered by Rudy Gobert and Jaden McDaniels. And Ant is a good defender certain games. I'm just saying, like, game to game, I don't think he has the impact of a J-Dub, right? Or like an Amen Thompson or somebody like that, where you look at these guys and they're great athletes, but he doesn't have the impact game to game. I'd even say
he doesn't have the impact
Cade
ever.
Cunningham.
I just want to be clear. Ant never has the impact of a J-Dub or an Amen. Even his best defensive game of his life.
I just mean like those guys are really good athletes like Ant.
No, I know what you mean. And they make the most of it, and Ant
when Ant's engaged, he's a really good perimeter defender. He can put people in boxes, but he doesn't have that kind of positional versatility that those guys have. He doesn't have that kind of rebounding value, and he certainly doesn't have the rim protection value. So there's a gap there, but he's also way better offensively than all of those guys. And so that's why I just said all that to basically say there's only so great he can become as a defender where I do feel like there's value that he can tap into to round out his offensive game and be one of the best offensive players on the planet. I still feel like Ant has more room to grow there and can get even better as an offensive player. He just can't be number one because number one is the greatest prospect and freak of nature of all time. But it's okay being number two, man. Ant's still a monster, and I think he'll be a top 5 player one day. I remember my take for a long time has been Ant's going to be the best player on the planet. I think Ant can be top 3 to top 5.
Top 5's a lock. Top 5's a lock, Logan. Let's ride for your guy for a second. Ant will be a top 5 player, no question. He's not that far off right now.
He's close. I mean, he's top 10, I think, right now. I think it could be next season. I was hoping that this year he would ascend to best player in the world status, but I think next year he could be top 5.
Well, and again, best in the world status is different from top 5, going up against Jokic, Giannis, Shea right now, and then Shea, Wemby, especially Wemby. Like for the next few years, you throw Luka in there. I don't know. It's a very, very high bar, but it would just be very hard to argue anybody else at number 2 with the rate of progress that we've seen from Ant. Because this is a guy who, for like a certain subset of NBA fans, perhaps the aura merchants, the guys who are just obsessed with the idea of, oh, Ant's a killer and he's an A++ athlete and he's a dog and whatever, like immediately fell in love with him and are like, okay, this guy's going to be the next face of the league. And then some people, as a response to that, were probably like, no, he's actually not as good as you're making him out to be. But the reality is he just keeps getting better. Every single year he gets better in one way or another. This year was the most ridiculous yet with the leap that he took as a pull-up three-point shooter. Like absolutely absurd that now we're talking about Ant having a historic three-point shooting season. And I think that you laid out basically everything that you look at. Defensively, I don't really know how good Ant's ever going to be. Like I do think that he's solid there, but although he is a very good athlete, he's not a very impactful defender. Like he has issues as a screen navigator, lapses as an off-ball defender, not somebody who makes a lot of impactful plays as a help defender, secondary or tertiary rim protection. So like he's just solid there. But the playmaking is interesting because no, he is not a natural high-level processor playmaker, but he's improved there. And he has impressed me with his ability to figure stuff out the more that he sees it. I think about the playoff series against the Lakers, and I think about the playoff series against the Warriors, where early in that Lakers series, he actually approached the defense pretty well in game 1, and then he was pretty confused by this kind of funky defensive look he was seeing in game 2 and kind of stopped passing the ball and had 0 assists in that game, and that was concerning. And then he pretty much picked them apart as a passer the rest of the way. And then the Warriors series, similarly, very shoot first in game 1, only a couple assists, and then got better as a processor and a playmaker throughout that series. So I'm just encouraged by pretty much everything I've seen from the guy. And then absolutely, he does have this incredible downhill ability. Even if he doesn't get to the rim at the highest volume and doesn't get to the line at the highest volume, he still has the ability to do that at quite a high level and has a really rare combination of explosiveness, strength. Would have liked to see him literally finish better on layups in the playoffs, but overall he's got a pretty great resume as a contested finisher. The one thing that also really interests me with Ant, I think the playmaking is obviously going to determine just how high he can rise in the player rankings in the NBA. The other is the intermediate scoring, like you're talking about, just because I struggle to fully write off the possibility that Ant can just continue adding more dimensions to his game. That is the one thing that's like always been lacking for him and hasn't gotten markedly better.
Just
because
touch. I mean, like,
yeah.
To me, I don't know. I feel like those 3-point shots are almost easier to step into for Ant, just because like normally guys are giving him a cushion and like he normally has more time to set his feet and rise and fire into those looks. Like mid ranges are. I don't feel like Ant has elite touch. Like, and I feel like that's why it's such a struggle for him, because it's a finesse kind of thing, and
yeah.
There's some guys that have it, and I just don't think Ant does yet. And it's a hard thing to develop. I mean, that's a tough shot to add to your bag.
And as much as the mid-range stuff, if not more so, like it's the floater game where he's just never had that with any sort of volume. It's just not a natural aspect.
I was going to say, like, I don't know how many floaters I've ever seen Ant just take. I don't know if I've seen Ant take a floater.
Well, he's taken them, but he doesn't take a ton. And where I was going to give him credit is, like, that's a flaw that remains in his game. And I do think it's very important to build out that nuance as a scorer, especially when you get to the playoffs, right? The shots that defenses are going to have the hardest time taking away are those intermediate shots. So you don't want to just live off of them. You want the super efficient stuff at the rim. You want the super efficient stuff from beyond the arc with volume. You need all of that. And then you also need to be able to face a loaded up defense if you can, and still be able to isolate, get to your spot from 15 feet, still be able to beat pick and roll coverages with the floater game. Like in a clutch situation in the playoffs, those are very important shots. That's where Ant needs to get better as a scorer. And that's been an issue for him since he was a prospect. But the guy's gotten better at like everything else since he was a prospect. And that's really what I want to hammer home, because I've seen this revision with Ant where like people prop him up as what a great prospect he was.
He was not a good prospect. I mean, he was
being the number one pick. He was seen as a weak number one pick prospect.
And there was just a lack of polish with Ant's game. You saw the building block with that raw athlete, but there wasn't a ton with it. And you look back at like that Georgia team didn't win a ton of games because Ant was this monstrous prospect. Like he wasn't as far along, I guess, as people think. And I'm glad you mentioned that, dude, because I know that you make fun of it, like the aura and the dog and that is one of my favorite aspects of Anthony Edwards, though, his mentality.
Well, you're in love with him.
I am in love with him. I'm deeply in love with him. He's the GOAT!
The one thing that I would recommend is do not have any of his children. That's just me to you speaking.
I'm going to leave that one alone.
Okay.
Ant, as a recommendation to you, let's wear some protection, man. Maybe let's wrap it up. But
that's what Jokic said to MPJ.
That is what Jokic said to MPJ.
What a time to be alive. But yeah, I think it's important. Like, Ant was an A++ athlete as a prospect. That was clear. The jumper, I mean, was not nearly what it's become. He was a 29% three-point shooter. The passing was a major question mark. We were like, is this guy ever going to be engaged defensively? So, yeah, I just see that sometimes where people are like, oh, you don't think Ant was a better prospect than Cade? And it's like, no, he wasn't. He's improved. And by the way, I don't think that matters at all. Like, what matters is how good they are now. Ant has improved so dramatically. He's clearly a good bit better as a basketball player than Cade. To me, that's the most important thing. And in fact, that's actually a positive because it indicates this continuous upwards trajectory that I do think is one of the most impressive things about Ant.
And yeah, the last thing I was going to say about his mentality specifically is Ant. I love the fact that Ant is never short on confidence, and it feels like anything the guy puts his mind to do, he is going to accomplish. And I feel like if he directs that mental energy to progressing as a intermediate shot maker and a playmaker, he's going to do it. He's done it with every other aspect of his game in his short career, and I have no reason to doubt him.
Also, really good playoff performer, man. Like, truly very impressive. And it's not just first few runs. Like, he shot the three ball really well, better than he did in the regular season. Now we're at the place where, like, okay, he just is an elite shooter. And he's just impactful on the boards. I've been impressed with his passing overall in the last two playoff runs. Again, right, he's had his shortcomings in both of their playoff exits these past 2 years, and we understand that, and that's why we're not talking about Ant as a top 5 player right now. But when you consider what he is, bona fide superstar, just turned 24 years old, as much as I love Evan Mobley, Ant has the potential to be a scoring champ, maybe, although that bar is really, really high as long as Shea is around it, and Luka sets that bar really high too. But like, he could have one of those seasons, and if the passing continues to improve, yeah, he's just a really, really, really impressive talent.
Especially because his shooting ceiling is so high now that he's added that pull-up three.
It's crazy. Number 1, Logan, is
Wemby. It's Jonathan Kuminga if you're the Golden State Warriors.
God.
So I'm waiting. He's going to blossom this year, 30 points per game, 10 boards, 6 assists. Dude, he's just as good, in my opinion, as like the guys in his draft class, man. He's better, you know?
You know, when you said 30, 11, and 6, for a second I thought you were talking about Wemby because I said, yeah, I could see that. And then I realized you were talking about the cum bucket. Let's talk
It's
about
happening
Wemby.
this year. That's why That's why the Warriors are gonna give Jonathan Kuminga a max contract.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Wemby. It's obviously Wemby. I mean, who else was it gonna be?
I wanted
Wemby?
to have Neemias Queta, but he's 26. Rats.
Don't get me started, buddy. You're gonna get me aroused.
I know. I think the Antuck already got you there.
Neemias Queta starting Boston Celtics center. Let's go, man.
Let's go.
How the mighty have fallen.
Real.
Wemby's second season was really, really encouraging, and I thought the fact that they brought in a guy like Chris Paul actually like helped Wemby in some certain areas, like where he wasn't having to initiate from the perimeter as much and stuff like that. Fed him some more easy buckets, and really, that's kind of what I'm looking for with Wemby. Is I just want to see Wemby create more of that like easy offense. He's a freakish talent, obviously. Like his ability to shoot the ball at such a high rate, being this tall is insane. Like it's unparalleled. There's not really anything you can point to. Like, you know, Dirk is 7'1" spraying the ball like that. Cat's a 7-footer. You know, Wemby's 7'4" shooting like this, and so he's got insane touch, insane coordination in feel and agility for a guy his size, ridiculous fluidity for his frame. And offensively, I feel like we talk about this all the time with Wemby. The next step really is him just getting those easy kind of looks. If it's stuff around the rim, if it's on the block. I know we had a little bit of a debate, like if he should be shooting the three ball as much as he does, or if he should cut it back, maybe a few attempts a game, but that is a big part of his scoring skill set right now. I would like to see him just take more shots inside the arc because I think he's so unstoppable. But I mean, the spot where the guy makes his money is defensively. I mean, he is a one-of-one defensive kind of prospect and defensive playmaker and player in general. Is he already? Would I be foolish to call him the greatest defensive playmaker ever? Do you think that's already a stretch?
Ooh, well, okay. If we're only counting the era in which they have tracked steals and blocks, so starting in 74, because we know that Bill was averaging 8-10 blocks a game, and Wilt was putting up some massive block numbers too. I still think you got to defer to Akeem for now. David Robinson also insane, but when you're just talking about that combination of like monster 4 blocks a game, and then also having pretty good steal production, I think that's your big 3 for now, and Wemby's already there. It's just like some of the stuff from Robinson and Akeem, man, where they're averaging like 4.5 blocks a game and almost 2 steals, and you're like, what the fuck? Akeem is a year at 4.6 blocks and 2.1 steals.
Wow.
It's insane.
That is insane. What is that total stocks per game number?
6.7.
Nice. Damn,
and
you
David
said the point.
Robinson
Fuck.
had a 6.8. He had 4.5 and 2.3 steals. And how tall is Amen Thompson?
6'7".
Nice.
Wemby is, I think, already in those defensive playmaker kind of conversations just because he can do stuff that nobody else can. He can cover ground and make up ground that other guys just can't. Like, and I've seen Chet do some stuff like this too, but like a guy coming down on a fast break and throwing an alley-oop when Wemby's defending the guy with the ball, and then he turns around and stuffs the rim attempt on the back end when he turns 180 degrees around because he's so long. I don't even know if Wemby's rim deterrence fully shows up in some of these advanced stats and analytics because Wemby's greatest asset inside might just be his pure rim deterrence, the fact that people don't even want to try him on the inside because they know he's going to pack it if they get anywhere close inside. So that's where most of Wemby's value is coming from, the fact that he is going to be one of the greatest defensive players of all time in terms of complete value, rim protection, defensive playmaking. I don't know if he'll ever be like a super like switchable guy like on the perimeter, like just because he is so tall. Like I feel like it's hard, even though he is really coordinated for such a tall guy. And I mean, with his frame, he can just play a big drop on guys, but really high level. Like, you know, I don't know if you'll ever be like as switchable as Mobley or
No.
like Chet. I don't think that's
I don't think it's possible at 7'4".
Yeah.
He's as mobile and fluid as you possibly could be at his size.
Agreed. And then offensively, it's really just refinement. Because when you are this big, you can get such easy opportunities. If it's just easy alley-oops where you can throw the ball anywhere up near the rim and Wemby's going to catch it and finish it. If it's easy putback attempts off of an offensive rebound that he just grabs and goes back up with it. If it is just three-point opportunities where he can shoot over the top of guys, Wemby has such a high baseline for offense right now because of his outlier skill set in frame. It really is just the refinement in some of those really little areas, I think, offensively and defensively, that will determine how great he is as a basketball player. But I'd say already right now he is a top 10 player in the NBA. You could argue him, I think, with what he was giving you last year. You could probably argue him as a top 5 player if you wanted. I don't know if I'd put him there just yet.
Regular season.
Yeah, I think you could argue it. So it's just how high does he climb next season? Does he crack the top 3? I couldn't count it out. You talked about Anthony Edwards' progression, and Wemby was one of the greatest prospects that we had ever seen, but his development trajectory has been so exponential year after year that maybe he could next year. I wouldn't count it out.
Yeah, and it's not even just year after year. It's month after month. Like, the leaps within the season are pretty incredible. The stuff that we've already seen from Wemby in his first 2 years. He's such a no-brainer. I mean, truly, if you are considering anybody else, I have no idea what your criteria is. We are talking about a guy who I think will be one of the greatest defensive players ever. Could be the greatest modern defender, the greatest defender since Bill Russell. Like, that is in the cards because this dude literally has physical tools, the likes of which we've never seen. 7'4", 8-foot wingspan with his kind of fluidity. And no, he'll never be Chet Mobley switching out onto the perimeter. But also, I mean, just the absurd range that he can cover up with his length, where he can give you a few feet of cushion and he can still smother or effectively contest jumpers. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous while he is blocking 4 shots a game and is the premier rim deterrent in basketball. And then offensively, man, I mean, truly, the more I think about it, the more ludicrous it becomes that this guy in year 2 started launching 9 threes a game and making over 35% of them. Like, what the fuck, man? Because, yes, I also think that for Wemby's offense to really hold up against a really good playoff defense against a team that can really switch, he'll need to have more in terms of a post game. I would just in general like to see him rolling more because he is such a ridiculous target off the roll, obviously just with the unparalleled size and the fluidity as a roller. Like, that's super, super efficient offense. But we'll see what level of a post scorer he ever becomes. What I don't question is that, like, the second he plays with the point guard who can consistently amplify him, he'll be this ridiculous, ridiculous combination of rolling and popping. The greatest we've ever seen. The greatest combination of vertical spacing around the basket and legitimate three-point spacing. I mean, he can extend defenses out 30 feet. He's got that KP kind of range where, like, he can pull from so deep at this ridiculous height. And then he also adds the dimension of being able to actually handle and actually do it off the dribble and actually shoot pretty well off of step backs. It's just disgusting. The foundation here is just disgusting. And then you add the fact that he's a legitimately good passer and presumably will continue to get better there. And then you add the fact that when you gave him competent point guard play this year, man, Victor Wembanyama, when he was on the floor with 40-year-old Chris Paul, per 75 possessions, averaged 29, 12, and 4 on 61% true shooting. And the Spurs were a plus 7.5 net team. Like, when I think about what realized Wemby with realized Dylan Harper, with a downhill guard like that, with a playmaker like that can be, it's absurd because he is still somebody who, as impressive as his offensive production and value already is, like, he will benefit considerably from a legitimate high-end guard creator. That's always been the biggest need to pair him with, in my opinion. And even though he hasn't had that yet, he's already putting up the numbers that he is, 24, 11, and 4 on almost 60% true shooting with best in the world defense at 21 years old in his second year.
Yeah. The only other thing I wanted to add is that long-term, I think Wemby's going to continue adding more like the finesse aspects of his game out. If Wemby really does add more weight to that frame, which he already added a bunch from year 1 to year 2, Like, if he starts backing guys down and putting them on the block and just getting the easy little, like, baby hooks and floaters and push shots, like, stuff like that.
His touch is good, man.
It is. I'm just saying, like, if he's physically imposing enough to get to that spot every time, bro, Wemby could be like a 35-point per game efficient scorer. No bull. No bull.
Well, yeah, I guess we'll have to see. There's a ways to go until that for sure. That's like a high bar.
28, 29-year-old Wemby, 35
Oh, I thought you were about to say 28, 29 points per game, and I was going to say, there, I'm with you. If we shave 7 points per game off, I don't know, 35, that's insane. I don't think Wemby's ever doing that. But, like, it's the all-around jump shooting stuff where he's 84% from the line in year 2. I think he's 50% in the paint outside the restricted area. That's a really good number. So I agree. Like, the strength component is the biggest one because clearly the three-point shooting is already there. I just think it's going to come down to, okay, mismatch attacking. How much damage can he do? And that's going to be a strength factor because he can shoot over top of anybody he wants until the end of time, obviously. But he's not an elite enough shooter for, like, you know, those 15, 16-foot turnarounds to be, like, efficient bread-and-butter offense. But if he can start working his way to where it's, all right, now I'm getting to the hook shot 8 feet over you, or it's a short little turnaround jumper, yeah, that's scary, man. That's scary. Wemby can do things on the basketball court we've never seen before, and he's just going to get so much better from here.
Wemby stat line next year, what's your guess?
I'm going to say 27, 12, and 4.3 assists per game.
Okay.
I think that the steal and block numbers are basically the same. I think that he's maybe a little bit more efficient inside the arc, even though I don't think that Fox is the best archetype to set him up as a playmaker. Nevertheless, he'll be playing with the best offensive player by far that he's played with. So I think that's a reasonable expectation. I don't know what the most points per game Wemby's ever going to average is. If he got to 30, that would be wildly impressive to me, just because that requires a certain level of offensive skill that is very high, but he does have, like, the most physical advantages damn near ever.
35.
That's insane. That's insane. Joel Embiid didn't even quite get there.
Or maybe he's giving you 30.
Bob McAdoo didn't even quite get there.
Maybe he's giving you like 30 and 8 assists a night or something like that.
8 assists?
Bro, I mean, I think Wemby's going to be the player.
You think he's going to be the greatest player ever?
Yeah.
But, like, literally, like, I don't think it's close. If Wemby gives you 30 points and 8 assists per game with, like, 13 boards and some of the best defense we've ever seen? Yeah, okay, so you are a Wemby GOAT truther.
I mean, yeah. There's not, like, a lot of...
8 assists per game? You understand the only centers to ever do that are Jokic and Wilt.
Yeah, it's like, dude, if Wemby fills out his frame and gets strong and creates it...
Sabonis got really close.
I'm going to crash out. He ruined it. I'm no longer...
Actually, DeMontis Sabonis did it. He hit 8.2.
Boo.
So that's the club. So you think that...
Yeah, he could be better than Sabonis for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think if he fills out his frame, he really carves out that back-to-the-basket game, man. And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking 3... This is like a 7, 8 years out, like fully realized peak Wemby. Yes, I think it is possible.
I just think, like, that is no question the greatest player ever. 30, 13, and 8 with the best defense on the planet. Some of the best defense ever. Wow. I am still not that high on Wemby. I feel like we need to really emphasize how insane 8 assists per game for a center is. That is genius level passing.
Mm-hmm.
I do not view Wemby as that level passing talent. But if you were to say to me, okay, maybe he could get to 30 points per game, and could he get to 5 assists per game? Absolutely.
I'm saying he's going to be so effective as a scorer, the teams are going to have to throw these doubles where he's going to get some, like, he's going to get a different kind of treatment offensively where he's going to have to become better as a playmaker.
Yeah, 8 assists a game is still just an insanely high bar. I mean, those are truly video game numbers that you've thrown out there for Victor Wembanyama.
Nobody's ever existed like Wemby, man.
So I was going to ask if you think that he will peak higher than the peak Jokic is at right now. It sounds like you think he's basically going to be Jokic on offense with Wemby defense.
I think Wemby's going to be the GOAT.
Wow. It's a bold claim, Logan. I have said before that I think he'll be Mount Rushmore. And I think that's a pretty fucking bold claim. I guess it's not that bold with how insane a talent he is, but you've taken it even further. And that's why the people love you, Logan. I kinda can't believe some of the things that you just threw out there for Victor Wembanyama. 35 points per game and 8 assists per game. We're both set.
Okay, not consecutively. No.
I know. Well, it's one or the other. He's either going to be 35 points per game as a scorer, or, yeah, he'll dial down the scoring volume a little bit, ratchet up
Exactly.
the playmaking. He'll give you 30 points.
He's
going
to have mercy on the rest of the league and share the ball with his teammates.
You know, I've been watching actually an interview of Wemby in French as I'm working on my French, like to consume basketball content, sports content, interesting stuff. And he did say, basically, his philosophy was, be a good person. And he said all the great thinkers agree that the way to be the best version of yourself is to make those around you better. And that's his basketball philosophy.
Hell yeah.
How about that, Victor Wembanyama?
8 assists a night.
If there's a will, there's a way. If the monks will it to be, if KG wills it to be, who knows what Wemby. If the spirit of Mao Zedong, his boy, wills it to be, who knows, man. Oh, great episode, Logan. We got to talk about Evan Mobley and Chet Holmgren for a long time. That too, but for me personally, the highlight was Chet and Mobley, although you did make me be very honest about them. I wish that I could have just said nothing but positive things, but I had to justify my rankings. But fun stuff, man. I love ranking shit with you, Logan. I love talking about the NBA, and we hope that you guys all enjoyed this along with us. If you did, the good news is there is so much more Nerd Sesh content. We've got, of course, all of our NBA rankings from throughout the summer, current, historical, and we've got our NFL season preview content, and we've got our trivia stuff. Also, I've been making the rounds, Logan. I've been doing something of a podcast tour. I'm just going to shout them all out. If you want to see Logan and I on the Stay Hot podcast, you can go and find that on their Patreon. Go become a member. Go support them financially. They're begging for your money. They're begging for it. Throw them at them. Call them peasants. Shame them for it. But nevertheless, go check out that pod. I talked about the top 10 players of all time with Mars over on the Hoop Talk podcast. That went on for 5 hours. I was on the State of the League podcast, and we actually came together as the BIA, the Basketball Intelligence Association, and plotted and conspired about how to make Wemby's GOAT case. Little do we know, we didn't have the greatest fucking mind of all time, Logan Camden, who was willing to set benchmarks that
I don't think that's
nobody ever even thought of.
I don't think it's even
It's
that
crazy.
nuts.
It is crazy.
It's Wemby. I've never seen anybody like him, man. And now he's
Neither have I.
He was a
Neither have
part of my
I.
community too, dude. He shaved his noggin. His noggin.
I've never seen anybody like Wemby before, but that's always going to be about the defense first. Some of the offensive bars that you set were insane to me. But anyways, again, we missed out clearly on your genius there. And as I mentioned earlier, went over on the Deep 3 pod and ranked the 30 most valuable players in the NBA. So if you're like, oh my God, I need more Nerd Sesh content, well, there you have it. That's the next best thing you're going to get, and it's pretty damn good. So check out all that if you want. You can listen to our shows across all audio platforms, and you can follow us across social, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh and Twitter at Nerd_Sesh. And with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.